Well, welcome. We had an earlier session on a very similar topic, operational analytics, pretty much. And I covered some parts of operational analytics. And this session, I think, is really helpful because it's about the value that you bring to the company when you do these types of applications. So I'd like to just ask, how many people went to this morning's one? Okay, I see a few familiar faces, so I'll just talk to the people that didn't go. No, I'm just kidding. So I'll show a few of the slides that I showed before. I'm going to show some survey results that we did, but I'll show different ones from the other part, because I was trying to get those people to come back. So, and it's part of a strategy report that we're going to be putting out shortly, and we had collected data over the last year about the operational analytics, which is really in the manufacturing intelligence space. And so we'll talk about what that is. So anyway, good afternoon. Glad to have everybody back, and welcome to everybody new as well. My name's Janice Abel, and I'm an analyst with ARC. And my focus area is in the manufacturing intelligence area, the operational analytics, also in the MES and the batch manufacturing, and I've done a little bit of work in the operator training simulators. So one of the things that we is that these technologies are evolving. Everything's becoming digitized, and there's a lot of changes that I think, and I can feel a lot of energy even in this room. So that I think that you're going to see that it's a really exciting time to be part of the process industry, and I think people had mentioned that this morning. So with that, I'm just going to, this is the schedule. I'm going to speak for a few minutes, and we have, well, this is the other schedule. This is the morning one. This is the morning one. We need the speakers for this session. It should have been the ROI session. Oh, that's the one I just gave before. Yeah, deja vu. We had it in the last session, so unfortunately. Okay. Nope, that's not it either. Nope. Doesn't look familiar. This is supposed to be track 4, I thought. There we are. Is that it?
Nope.
No.
That's the previous one.
That's track 5. We need track 4.
There we go.
Yay. Okay, good. Okay, so the title of my presentation is ROI and Operational Analytics. So what's, we're going to talk a little bit about the operational analytics, some of the drivers and benefits, and I think I just got it down to one survey result at this point because, or one or two maybe, because just in the interest of time. We have 3 speakers, and I really want you to see them because I think they're world-class speakers. And I've seen some of their presentations, and you're going to be shocked at some of the value that you're seeing. So anyway, I want to just talk about, kind of put it in placement. I talked a little bit about the people that saw this earlier. You can just relax for a few minutes and think about the what's to come. So anyway, the way that I look at this space is, and this is just from my imagination, okay, you have all the control and the automation, all the data that you get from that. You also have the modern MES, and I mentioned earlier, this space is changing. We're seeing a lot of change in this space. We're seeing things in the cloud. We're seeing all kinds of, more modular type applications. So it's going to be a really interesting times in the future. We're seeing different visualization. And so anyway, part of this space, you see the planning and scheduling usually. You see the recipe management, batch management. You can see the workflow and the production management. We also see the quality management. Traceability is a big part of the space. And then the part that we're really focused on is the operational analytics within the operations space. And that also includes part of the data connectivity, the data context, the analytics, and the dashboards, the KPIs, those kind of things, and the visuals. And a lot of that's changed. And the other part of it is we're seeing new devices and things like the cloud that's allowing us to store data and do enterprise-wide type applications, including data to the cloud. And we're seeing things like edge, fog, and you're hearing about all of these things today that are helping with issues that people have with the cloud, like bandwidth and latency. So what are the parts? The data infrastructure historian, we talked a little bit about this earlier. We also, the data collection, which is the integration, the aggregation, and the management. And then the data context, making sure it's in context, that you can understand what's going on. The analytics and the analysis, the visualization, and that's changing dramatically. And we'll talk a little bit about that, the dashboards and the reporting. And that's pretty much what we call operational analytics and operations intelligence. And hopefully everybody in this room is now we're kind of all on board. So, and I did a little bit of data cleansing with the data myself that you're going to see, because the thing that came up was that, we asked for end users to take it, and a few suppliers will slip in, so I kind of try to cleanse them out. So I did my own data cleansing. When you see the results, they're for end users. So the things that we really are seeing are some of these new analytic tools, and you're going to see that today with the results of these tools. And we are seeing a lot of changes in this area with the newer types of analytics, and a lot of that's driven by some of the ability to do a lot of processing of data. We talk a little bit about that. We're also seeing, you're hearing about all these new architectures, platforms, new services. A lot of people are actually doing data as a service, predictive data, and all kinds of things in that area we're seeing. And we looked at probably, the last year I spent a lot of time looking at different analytic tools in all different types of industries, even outside of the manufacturing industry. And someone said that some of these things are going to be coming from outside the industry, and we can talk a little bit about that as well. And so then the visualization is probably one of the biggest areas, and the mobility and things like that. So we did ask in the survey, what is some of the most important criteria? And we're going to kind of glance at a lot of these, but these are all the parts of it really. And the number one thing was the ease of integration with all the multiple data sources that people have, and these can be everything from production, DCS, LIMS, so on, et cetera. The analytic tools are very important, so this is what they're looking for. Ease of use, and I can't even emphasize that enough. How easy is it to learn? Is it intuitive, people ask. The quality of the visualization, the scalability, the ability to scale it up and accommodate future growth, and roll it out even across the enterprise. And also, in this one, and there were more categories too, but these were the ones that came up the top, the proof of ROI to justify the investment. And I thought that one would be hard, but then I'll show you another chart that's going to show you, when I asked about inhibitors, the number one thing was the cost, and so you need to show the value and justify it in the case, in making the business case. So what is the most important? We're seeing a lot about analytics and dashboards, and the analytics and dashboards are really the tools that help enable the operations and manufacturing intelligence. And we are seeing predictive, prescriptive, predicting what's going to happen, and prescribing what the result can be. And so we are starting to see that. We're seeing it probably more in the discrete, but we are seeing it in the process, and the examples we have today are in the process industry. So I think you're going to be really impressed with these. So the other thing that comes up is, what are these tools? What is the analytics? And everybody has the definition of analytics. Somebody else came up in the last session and actually read the definition of analytics, which I did the same thing, because I was like, well, what do they mean? But the reality is yes, it is analytics. The same analytics when I go back to school years and years ago, we had just a calculator. We didn't have these fancy computers today. We didn't have the computing power. Same kind of analytics. Neural networks, they talked about that, expert systems, artificial intelligence, machine learning, even cognitive learning. I heard people talk about that, and that's a part of artificial intelligence. All of those tools we had and the types of algorithms, and that really wasn't the focus. The focus is the tools and how they make it easier to adapt to the data and even find the data. So that's really the most important part to me. It's having that newer and better computing power and the better tools. And so there's newer and better software tools, and you're going to see some of that. So I had another slide, but I think this is my older version, unfortunately. So anyway, I asked about standard out-of-the-box dashboards, and the number one was production manager, followed by maintenance and quality manager. So the one thing that strikes me, and this is so important, and I see this across the board, that people sometimes just having a description, just monitoring and putting a visualization in the plant really has a lot of implications, and operators really respond well to it. One guy was saying that he just saw it was a plant manager, he said he saw an unbelievable increase in performance just because of the visualization. And what I say is visualization drives performance. So it's really important to have good visualization. So we also asked about the top inhibitors, and that's what I had said earlier, was the number one thing was that the company doesn't understand the potential benefits, which is why this session's focused on the value and the ROI. And it may not be dollars and cents on all the time. A lot of times you can do something to equate it to it, but the reality is that's what you have to do, is show the value. And one of the ways is to look at other use cases and say, I have something similar or something around that, and I could do something like that, and I could probably get a lot of value and find some potential. And we saw some really good situations in the last session and what people are doing and roll it out and everything else. So those are some of the other things that people mentioned. One of the other ones that they said it takes too long and the time to deploy. So time is money. So the other thing that we asked about was some of the benefits. And the areas that I've seen is in production liability, waste, loss, asset maintenance is a big thing, asset management. We're seeing a lot of people going after those areas. Waste is another one, improving productivity is a big one. Safety is another one that we hear sometimes. Quality is a big one that we're seeing in process, upstream and downstream. And then also in the energy management is another one that we're seeing. So the thing is, what is the value? Well, the value is going to depend on a lot of different factors. So the cases, I'm seeing actually a lot of these tools by industry, very similar industries. I'm seeing a lot in both processing and discrete being used. So you're going to see some of these results, and I think that you're going to be impressed. But anyway, I mentioned before the data scientist is important because companies see a lot of value in the data. And then the data scientists are really creating the tools that contextualize and find the data. So, and that's really important, I think, to have the data scientist because it allows people, the engineers and the operators and the process experts are still necessary too. And I said, they can't go away, but they can use those tools that are created by the data scientists. And sometimes, in some cases, we heard the data scientists come in and do the initial modeling. And then after that, the model adapts to the data. It depends. And that's what I think is really the differential is some of, how it adapts to the data and what the tool does for you. So I think that's what you really need to focus on, not so much the algorithms. So where are we going? Well, I mentioned before we're going to autonomous operations. Some of you saw this, driving along your car. And you're going to have to make decisions when you get to the automated plant of the future. And in some cases, it's going to be a tough decision. You're driving around, and all of a sudden, now you have to choose between, out of the blue, you see a bunch of kids on the road. You either drive off the cliff and kill yourself, or you hit the children. So those might be some choices you have to make, and hopefully you won't have to. And somebody said, and I think they said to me, well, that wouldn't happen but once in a lifetime. But some of these things that happen, every 5 years you hear something really disastrous happen in some industrial plant. So you are going to have to program some of these decisions in. And that's really where we're going in the future. And I think that we are starting to see autonomous operation. If you look at the Tesla car and some IKEA has a lights out factory, and there's some other examples we see more in the discrete, but I think the process industry will get there too. So these all will be pre-programmed, and you need to make the right decision. So really, operational analytics is about getting value from the data, and ultimately, really the value is not having it sit and doing nothing. Really, the data is virtually useless unless something is done with it that allows you to get the intelligence that's actionable and delivers value to your organization. So that's really my message here. And that's with that, I'd like to thank you and save your questions for the panel because I'll call the panelists up. We have some